Welcome back to Autodesk Digital Builder Podcast. I am your host, Eric Thomas. Today, we are once again live from San Francisco in the beautiful Autodesk Gallery. And I always tell our audio listeners, head over to YouTube, check this out. We're in a very beautiful space right now. I am joined by Darren Bechtel, the Managing Director of Brick and Mortar Ventures. And we're going to talk a bit about venture capital, investments in the broader AECO industry, and a whole lot more. Darren, how are you feeling today?
Good, very good. It's always fun coming back here. My first day of work ever, my grandfather took me out to lunch here in this building at the One Market restaurant.
Really?
So I always have fond memories when I come back.
Nice.
And not a bad venue either.
Oh, absolutely. It's a real privilege to get to film down here, and it's always fun when I get to come back to the Bay Area. I lived here for a long time myself, so it's a nice trip to say the least. But I'd like to start off learning a bit more about brick and mortar ventures. Can you tell me the role venture capital plays in the broader construction industry and just a bit about the company?
Yeah. I mean, because we can talk sort of more generally just about the role of venture capital, or more specifically brick and mortar's role in the sort of venture dollar ecosystem. Brick and mortar ventures, we're known as the construction tech VCs, and I say that's usually over reductive but good enough for most conversations. More accurately, we say that we invest in emerging technology that helps the world improve the way that we design, build, operate, and maintain the built environment. But that's a bit of a mouthful. So construction tech's usually good enough. But more specifically, we invest in early stage. That's typically seed and Series A as our initial entry point or sweet spot. What does that mean as far as how mature that company is? It's sometimes pre-revenue or negligible revenue that we really like early. We like getting involved where we can still help with refining the initial product and the go-to-market strategy.
Okay.
That's where the economics can be most attractive. It's the highest risk, but highest potentially rewarding if it all works out. But it's also just the most fun. I'm definitely not a finance guy. I'm more of a builder myself.
Okay.
So we like the early stages where we can help influence both the solutions that are being developed, but also the trajectory the companies are on. And so the role for venture in general, the reason it exists is that those that can build a great solution and have meaningful impact may or may not have money. And they need money in order to invest in their own businesses. And in those early days, when a company is very risky and statistically destined to fail, now you have to have a little bit of a screw loose as an investor to be excited about putting money behind that. And so venture is very, very risky, but if you've got a good strategy and you build out a portfolio of these high risk investments, the hope is that the winners, those that succeed, cover all of the losses and then some. Rough generalizations here. To be considered good at what you do, you're trying to take whatever size fund you have as a VC and 3x that or 4x that over a 10-year fund life. Every fund manager, VC like myself, when they're out kind of passing the hat and trying to raise their own investments or capital commitments to the fund, will raise commitments based off of a strategy around what's their stage preference or what's their angle, why are they going to have access to the good deals and spot opportunity when either otherwise other people don't, or when are they going to get access to the deal if it is heavily sought after? That strategy helps act as a bit of a North Star for everybody. And in our case, we're sector focused, mostly on construction, but it also touches on design and facilities, the full global construction value chain. Early stage, invest globally. And we've got that early appetite to back companies before they've really proven whether or not there's a market there, and definitely before they've really proven market traction.
Yeah.
So
it sounds like an interesting sweet spot, though. And specifically within construction, our industry has very specific needs. And the founders that are trying to build for this industry have to be very strategic in what they bring to market, how they communicate it and everything. And so I'm not surprised you found your way to this specific sector given your background. And I'd just like to touch on that a little bit. I think most people listening to this conversation have heard a little bit about your family's legacy because, Bechtel Construction. And so I'd love to hear a little bit about how that influenced your journey into founding Brick and Mortar.
Yeah, we have an unconventional focus as VCs and unconventional backgrounds for VCs as well. I joke and say that my first job site experience was when I was 6 months old and we moved into a construction trailer in the jungles of Borneo.
Totally
Indonesia.
Typical background.
Yeah, totally normal. My dad was working his way up through the ranks at our family business, Bechtel, and at that point doing project management work. And so my brother, Brendan, was a little over a year and a half, and I was 6 months old. I was born over in Oakland. We were living down on the peninsula, and then 6 months old, moved into a trailer.
Nice.
Just like everybody does. But that was the world and ecosystem that I grew up in. Construction was definitely a common conversation around the dinner table. We also had the joy of being able to go and do a lot of project visits as a family, and then worked summers throughout school, a variety of different roles. Some of them, first day of my first summer job was here working in Bechtel headquarters a couple blocks away. I had a very nice lunch at One Market. Yeah, our family business is in its 126th year of operations. It was started by my great-great-grandfather, who had 2 donkeys and a scraper, and started grading ahead of the railroads being built west. Kind of started in Oklahoma and then hit the coast out here and set up shop. And today it's in its 5th generation of family leadership with my brother, Brendan, as the CEO.
Nice.
And so it's come a long ways from the 2 donkeys.
Yeah, I'd say the scope has increased considerably considering the general focus and impact the organization has had. Well, I love you walking me through that a little bit, and it all does make sense when you kind of step back. But I think it's also safe to say you were quite early to investing in construction technology. Yeah. And if we look back a little bit, what did you see back in 2015 that others might not have?
2015, that goes back to the origin story of Brick and Mortar Ventures. That's when the website and the logo first went live. At that point, I had already done a handful of angel investments into construction tech companies, as well as a number of other industry agnostic investments. But what became clear was that this was kind of the dawn of the innovation era, or maybe even premature for that, dawn of the digital era, maybe, for the built environments in general. And so it started, I think, with prop tech. Construction tech kind of gets clumped in with prop tech. But yeah, when we launched in 2015, the first mention of Brick and Mortar Ventures is actually me and Brendan Wallace, now famous from Fifth Wall Ventures, that we were doing AngelList syndicate deals as syndicate leads, as the real estate, hospitality, and construction tech-focused VC.
Okay.
And for those not familiar with AngelList, this was a crowdfunding platform. It was the early days of its existence as they were trying to really back syndicate leads and the sort of birth of emerging managers on the platform.
Can you define syndicate leads as well?
Yeah. At the core, what AngelList was known for was running special purpose vehicles or SPVs. That was a way that you could pool together a bunch of small checks into a single large check managed by a lead or syndicate lead. That in this case, it was either me or Brendan doing those. And it was just the person that acted as almost the investment manager on behalf of all these small investments, that they would underwrite the deal, say it was good or not. Then they would all go out and actually raise the capital commitments from the smaller investors. In the case of AngelList, it's, as the name kind of implies, it's a large group of kind of angel investors, all that are interested in making angel investments, but might not be able to do a large enough investment or check size to get direct access to a deal. AngelList provided a way that founders could either market an opportunity and kind of gather up smaller commitments, almost in a GoFundMe-like way.
Yep.
And then what AngelList started really investing time and energy building out was this ability for fund managers to kind of raise their own funds and make investments on the platform instead of it being a founder running a GoFundMe, like site dynamics of sorts.
Yep.
And so for us, Brendan had just sold a startup that he launched out of our business school that I was actually a seed round investor of, and was sort of vesting in peace, trying to figure out what next. He had been doing a number of direct investments in some of these SPVs or syndicated rounds and was pretty familiar with AngelList. We both kind of spotted this aha opportunity, the intersection of the built world and innovation, venture. We had tested out this kind of thesis together. Did I think 5 deals on AngelList as we were gearing up to go out and raise a dedicated pooled fund, kind of first true venture capital fund, and realized that prop tech was already, almost a decade more mature than construction tech as far as how many investments were out there, size of the rounds, valuations, and what was kind of the appropriate amount of money to raise.
I definitely started hearing prop tech before comtech as a term kind of thrown around.
Yeah. And I still think that many people kind of tuck Contech into PropTech. We fundamentally view it as two different layers, kind of foundational layers. That PropTech is really around how do you maximize your returns on the underlying built asset. And where we exist and where we focus is really that ground level or subterranean level of
actually building the dang thing.
Building it, caring for it, demolishing it, kind of rinse, wash, repeat.
Yep.
And that a big difference was, PropTech was typically selling into an office for a person that was in front of a computer that had an IT department. And so much of construction tech was the work's getting done out in the field. It is somebody that's for a long time not even connected or is maybe radio based. But it posed unique challenges that the environment in which you worked was not a desk inside of an office building, but it was changing constantly, and you were the one changing that. Very different work, kind of manual work. It's consuming and installing physical materials and products, and the fact that the teams doing the work are changing constantly too. That it's almost like a pickup game. On a daily basis and definitely on a project basis.
That's evolving with the staffing these days. I think people are being more diligent about holding on to their people with such a competitive and challenging labor market overall.
Yeah.
I'd be interested to hear more about the construction technology landscape more broadly from your perspective. I think you have a very unique purview building on all of your experience and just the fact that you're really looking very closely. So what specifically about construction tech has you really excited right now?
Well, there's a lot.
That's good to hear.
Outsiders or generalist investors often look and hear our story and say, man, that's pretty niche. Those familiar with construction realize it can be a little overwhelming at times. Was it close to a sixth of global GDP, somewhere around there? But it spans everything from just enterprise software to digitize a paper-based process through to novel materials, to robotics, to new business models, new vertical integration. And so it's kind of all over the place. That there's clear, obvious win productivity tools like PlanGrid is an early bet, which was great.
I'll agree just because I am sitting in front of you because of that.
Yes. It was great. And it proved to the world that construction was ready to change its ways and embrace technology that was purpose built and helped people out in the field, not just help the bottom line. You kind of have to have both of those, but it's a uniquely challenging industry to introduce new technology into if anybody along the way says, hey, this is not for me. From a product standpoint, the PlanGrid team did an amazing job of building the right solution for a real pain point that showed kind of immediate ROI.
Yeah. Proof point too on the fact that the founders, at least some of them, came from the industry directly.
Yeah.
And that type of influence building for a very exacting and specific base, I think had a big impact on that, because I've seen a lot of solutions float by made by folks who make assumptions about the construction technology or the industry. And there's no quicker way to send a general contractor looking at tech in the other direction when they look at it and go, well, this doesn't adhere to any problems I have or the way that I do work. It's a challenging market to sell to.
Yeah, we've definitely seen a lot of founders or salespeople make the cardinal mistake of saying, like, I know you and I know your problem and I have the solution. Yeah. And that works if you really do know that person or their type of work. And that's probably only possible if you've actually worked for that organization. Because even within the same subsector, people have different workflows and different styles. That's kind of the differentiation.
Even within the same company, I'd say, depending on the size of the organization and how they manage processes based on region or country they work in. Like you could be talking to somebody on the East Coast and the way that they work within the same org is entirely different than on the West Coast too. So
the specificity, that hyper focus is good in many aspects of life. I'm a simple-minded guy, so it helps in, trying to keep things organized, but really understanding a specific pain point of a specific customer and then developing a solution for that. I'm a little bit biased because that's also my undergrad training in the mechanical engineering and product design program at Stanford. And they just hammer into your head this concept of user-focused design, need finding process, that sort of discipline of really understanding what are we trying to solve and who are we trying to solve it for, instead of the saying of starting with a solution, looking for a problem. Yeah.
I think we had similar background in the technical communication programs I was in, as far as like writing documentation for the people that you're speaking to. You have to know your audience and the language you choose, the framing, the assumptions you can make on knowledge. Like there's a lot that goes into like instructions writing, for example, that I think folks might not realize unless they've tried to write a set of very detailed instructions themselves. I totally understand what you're saying here.
And that reminds me, we had a project in school that was called the Moccasins Project. And it was called the Moccasins Project because you're supposed to walk in the shoes of a very specific person. And I think can't remember if it was dog walkers or dog grooming, because we had two different projects and involved both of those. But needless to say, not my area of expertise. Learned a lot in a very short period of time. And I think for founders, it's helpful if you come from that industry experience. You've already lived and breathed it, at least in one organization. But even in that case, making sure that if you've only got one previous employer as that past industry experience, making sure that you're always kind of pressure testing any of those assumptions and doing the homework to make sure that you're understanding what that total addressable market is that you're looking at as you're thinking through building those products. It's not a prerequisite that a founder has to have construction experience. We definitely see that as a real benefit because just from credibility.
Yeah.
You kind of alluded to it earlier, a real challenge for especially Silicon Valley founders is that if they show up in sneakers like we've got, try to walk onto a job site in a black t-shirt, there's probably going to be some people that try to turn them away pretty quick.
Good luck.
But if you can say like, oh, I was a card-carrying union pipe fitter, you're going to surprise a whole lot of people. And they're going to say, well, why are you wearing the sneakers? Yeah. but you jump a couple steps ahead just from a credibility standpoint and say, okay, all right, you're not just a tech founder that's, trying to make a lot of money, but we've got some shared experience. Okay. Tell me what you got.
Oh, yeah. I feel similarly just with the general contractors that I worked on and some of the site walks I've had a privilege of doing. And granted, like I was mostly doing proposal management and contract modification. I would never represent myself as a builder, somebody who has the experience of a superintendent or project manager. But I've spent so much time speaking to all of these different players of a project, help win new work and help get more money for modifications and all these other things. And it's played a big role in why I feel comfortable in having these conversations because like I know where these folks are coming from. I've worn the boots, I've walked the sites. It's a tough industry at times, but also I just love the fact that like there's so much building happening and so much problem solving. It's a cool industry to have the privilege to serve.
Yeah. And I think you see that in many industries. Hospitality industry is a perfect example of that too. And, and they call it the industry, while there's so many different roles, just knowing that you're in that same industry and there's respect and people will tease each other for the different roles. I have worked both as like a gopher to the gopher on a home building crew and then also worked as the commercial architect.
Yeah.
There's always a way you get teased for whichever hat you're wearing. But there's still some respect to saying, we're all kind of working on the same project or same goal. And so there's some understanding and also just understanding where people don't know certain things and might need to be able to explain it. Many architects haven't built anything before. They design a lot and they might learn. But, kind of showing respect to all the different stakeholders and who the real subject matter experts are, critical. That's just a good lesson in life, too, is approach things with humility, ask more questions than talking. Yeah.
I'd agree with you on that one. Mm-hmm. So I want to take a pivot and look at what I think everybody's talking about these days is artificial intelligence and vibe coding specifically. From your perspective, how has this moment changed how contractors are thinking about adopting or building technology? And specifically, do you think there's any risks for folks who are out there building things themselves versus chasing some of the enterprise software that's out there?
It's really powerful, almost energizing and intimidating all at the same time for a person that has no technical training or maybe limited technical training. Let's just say no training in software coding can all of a sudden kind of be introduced to a new interface, be guided through a tutorial, and all of a sudden have what appears to be game day ready software that's completing a task. Like that is exciting. That's like a whole new world. It's a little dangerous also because this is a good example. We're sitting in Autodesk HQ here. People here aren't just kind of twiddling their thumbs, doing nothing all day. That there's an army of people that go into building game day ready, reliable, dependable, enterprise grade software.
Yeah.
The fact that people who did not possess the skill can do a new type of work is really cool, but doesn't necessarily mean it's what they should be doing or that what they're producing is going to be able to keep up with kind of the rigorous demands for an enterprise grade client. And so I think it's really helpful, and folks should familiarize themselves with the tools because it helps everyone dream a little bit bigger. And I do think that there's situations where absent a tool being available on the market, or if there is such a unique need that you are a customer, one of one, you might not find an established organization, a solutions provider that's interested in really building a perfect solution for that. So it's kind of filling in the gaps where, off-the-shelf solutions or even custom-built solution might not exist. That is helpful. But just like, I'm a fan of people learning how to handle themselves in a wood shop or a machine shop, not because I'm hoping everyone's going to become a carpenter, a mill worker, or, a machinist, but learning how things are made or how to structure it or how to structure your ask or the prompt, all super valuable skills.
Oh, absolutely.
There's no question that AI nativity is kind of a requirement for all organizations, and definitely all software. I don't think we're going back from there. It's table stakes. It's the same as cloud-based. Right now, we hear a lot of emphasis on it, and every founder saying that they are an AI first or AI native solution.
Yeah.
It's the same as
almost to an exhausting point.
Yeah. But it's still somewhat novel.
Yeah.
But it's the same how it's just assumed that people are cloud-based. And we don't have to say cloud-based software anymore.
Yeah.
That is just modern software, good and bad. I do get a little bit of, PTSD like reactions, kind of in like the mid to late 90s when should be customers of software were building their own software.
I remember that.
And on day one, it's great. And day two, it might still be pretty good. But software needs to be maintained. And the hardware that you're running it on continues to change and improve.
Yeah.
Forcing upkeep and changes. Again, back to specificity, kind of pick and swim lanes. It's what am I uniquely good at, and what do I want to do, and what do I want to charge money for, if making money is part of the goal. Just because you can perform a certain task, should you? If it is saying we're going to do everything we can, we should all have crop farms and be raising, livestock in the backyard and be subsistence farming.
I'll pass on that one.
Yeah, exactly. There's other people that are better at it at scale. It's a really exciting time. And I do think investing the time and energy, familiarizing oneself with the tools, what's possible, what's the language that people are speaking, invaluable. And for a short while, when sort of, again, off-the-shelf solutions aren't available, there can be immediate ROI from just having something that works right now. But one of my concerns is the sunk cost fallacy. And many organizations go through this, that if they develop something in-house, oftentimes whoever controls the budgets just fixate on the sunk costs that went into it.
Yeah.
And they might remain wedded to a solution that continues to become more and more obsolete, but says, hey, we put $1 million or $5 million or $10 million or $20 million into this, keep it working. Again, hopefully that provided immediate ROI. While there is sunk costs, there should have been some benefit along the way. But I think for most organizations, part of your job is to make sure you're always using the best tools available, and you're being as wise as you can with the capital that you're in charge of being a shepherd of.
Yeah.
And so there is ongoing operating costs for maintaining kind of legacy software. Even in the case of the work that we do with our corporate LPs or limited partners or investors, for those that are developing some of their own in-house solutions, we strongly encourage them to keep their eyes open and ear to the ground for the second that there is a off-the-shelf solution that is even remotely as close to as good as what they have built inside. Yeah. Because it is much better to be a preferred customer of a solution provider, if it's not core to their business or key competitive differentiation.
Okay. And I've started kind of fooling with this just out of curiosity. So I started as a computer science major, I think I mentioned, and that lasted one semester. It wasn't the way my brain works, and ended up in tech comm. But I wanted to just see, okay, could I vibe code a video game?
Yeah.
And I have successfully managed to force Claude into creating a very bizarre and interesting 3D Pong game that
Yeah.
runs in a web browser.
Yeah.
And I don't have any context for how I should be prompting something with the intention of game design.
Yeah.
So I'm just
Yeah.
telling it a story, basically.
Yeah.
I'm like, hey, this is
Yeah.
what I want. This is what I want it to look like.
Yeah.
And it works.
Yeah.
And I've been able to iterate some new features in. Occasionally it breaks, and then
Yeah.
I tell it broke, and it goes and it figures it out. And it's incredibly neat to see that I was able to do that, fooling with the minimal free credits I got over like a weekend or whatever.
Yeah.
But at the same time, that same tool is so much more powerful in the hands of a friend of mine who is an engineer, who knows exactly what he wants. He's looking for certain chunks of code to build into a bigger problem he's trying to solve, versus me going,
Yeah.
oh, let's make a video game that looks like this. And so I think it's also just a matter of like, what are you trying to achieve and who's trying to achieve it?
Yeah.
Because the ROI is going to be far more impactful from the programmer who has the context to be like, here's a potential security risk that you should code away from. And I'm like, I don't even know that risk exists because it's not my wheelhouse.
Yeah, well, exactly. And if you're looking at it sort of in a silo of the task is to build a game, you can probably get to something pretty quickly that looks like a game and check the box.
Yep.
But for that to meet any of the requirements, domestic or international, from like a data protection standpoint,
like my SCIF documentation isn't going into Claude tomorrow.
Yes. Yeah. And understanding all the different type, if it's something that you're planning on selling or just kind of keeping in-house, understanding the unique constraints that any of those users might be under.
Yep.
And in the case of construction, it's a whole different ballgame once you start doing federal work.
That's where I cut my teeth.
Yes.
My first 3.5 years were working on proposals for a federal contractor. I felt like my brain melted when I moved into the commercial world because the way I had been trained to be so exacting on the RFP responses, down to the font type, the font size, the kerning, the spacing, the number of pages exactly, and how it was delivered. And then I rolled into the commercial world and I'm like, but wait, the RFP said we have to do this. And everybody's like, we're going to give them whatever we want. Here's what you should build. And it was such a different experience. But also I do remember when we were working on like requests for equitable adjustment to try to get additional funding from change conditions on either firm fixed price, hard bid contracts and like imminent danger environments when I was working in the Middle East. And it was so wild to try to jump through those hoops. And I get why those hoops are there, but gosh, it is complicated and filled with risk.
Very. And there's no lowest common denominator.
Nope.
There's, I think, a wisdom that is built with time and experience, and that for any individual that's using some of these modern day vibe coding tools, their expenses are limited to just their experiences. And so organizations that have a wealth and variety of job site experience, it's powerful to have that kind of shared knowledge kind of going into developing a solution or improving it over time. Again, huge benefit in just understanding how modern day tools can be used and what's possible. I think for many, it teaches them like, oh, wow, there's a lot that I don't understand. This is complex. And the Dunning-Kruger effect or scale, like I think is helpful, that the more people experiment, the more they realize or come to appreciate that it is really complex. And there's a lot that goes into it from the tech side, but then also just from the end user side. That is all beneficial as someone's trying to either vet solutions to use or develop solutions to sell into the market. It's like, we better understand all the rules or all the restrictions or all the different types of, fringe cases that we're dealing with if you really want to build something that works in every situation. Or what's even more helpful is having that specificity and say, okay, we cannot be used in situations like this, or this, or project types like this, or this, or if you're this type of customer, sorry, we're not ready for that.
Yep.
That's helpful.
I'd love to pivot to construction hardware next. Like I usually sit on the software side of things, and that's where most of my perspective is. And so I'd like to just hear what's really cool and interesting to you right now, like what feels very cutting edge. Like robotics seems to be going crazy. I actually just had Tessa Lau from Dusty Robotics on. She said hi, by the way. Tell me about the robots and the hardware.
I love it. And this is a very fitting room. I see too, the first two things I'm looking at around here, there's so much opportunity out there. Because again, with construction, the work that is being performed is building something physical in a physical place that's consuming raw materials and building products. It needs to be built to spec. Most of the ways that we have designed and built the built environment is because of the limitations of human workers.
Mm-hmm.
The size of drywall sheets. It's been humans that are manually, manipulating and placing materials. So the size of the materials that, the maximum weight, that's what was driving a lot of that. You don't see a whole lot of rectilinear shapes in nature, but that's been easier for us to make and handle. With any introduction of new types of ways of making things are developed, you can now dream in a different way. With 3D printing being a great example that many people have some familiarity with.
Yep.
And now even just kids' toys that, the kids kind of focus 3D printers.
I love the level of development that technology has had. Yeah. It's become so accessible to everyday people and not just the very tech savvy, nerdy folks. 'Cause I remember my friends getting 3D printers initially. It was an ordeal to set the dang thing up and figure it out. And if it didn't work, diagnosis, and it was crazy. And now it's like, let me go buy my 3D printer from Walmart and it's going to work great.
Yeah. I mean, we have 2 little kids and our eldest is a 7-year-old boy that we caught sneaking out of his room before he was supposed to be awake. And so I thought I was going to have a teachable moment with him. And I said, what are you doing? He's like, I wanted to 3D print something, but it's a long print and I don't have enough time when, my light turns green, which is his alarm clock, to be able to start it before I have to go to school. So I just want to hit print.
like, okay.
Amazing. Okay.
Yeah, this one's fine.
You. But yeah, the fact that a 7-year-old who still is not as stealthy as he thinks he is able to fire this up and use a tablet and be able to find what he wants to print and do it. It's so cool that that's so accessible.
Yeah.
And also where I'm, I think, less of an alarmist when it comes to tech around, the destruction of humanity. The fact that 3D printing is so readily accessible, the majority of the products we have are not 3D printed.
Yeah.
But for unique situations, like rapid prototyping or really unique geometries, very exciting. And so that kind of, is a good segue back to the built environment and construction, is that when you introduce new means of making products or materials, you can now rethink or throw away the design limitations that used to govern it because of the established manufacturing practices, sheet metal, rolling, stamping, cutting, this kind of driving. And if you had a really organic shape like ductwork, someone could probably build it, but it would cost a lot.
Yeah, there's a lot of hand labor that goes into crafting that very unique format you decided you wanted to go with.
Very much so. And so we've got a portfolio company based in Chattanooga, Tennessee, that does 3D printed exterior wall panels.
Okay.
That they started with the kind of skeletal system first, but then using various types of additive manufacturing, subtractive manufacturing sort of standards, are able to 3D print kind of the equivalent of the framing, spray foam insulation into it, mill it out, do a nice finish. And so these organic shapes that an artist could dream up and a builder would tell you, good luck. Now, all of a sudden, you no longer have to pay a crazy premium for something that truly is unique.
Is that 3D printer on-site or off-site, and how big is it?
That one's off-site.
Okay.
And so they do prefab kind of panelized systems.
Oh, yeah. So they come in and then stand everything up.
Yep. And so it's exterior wall panels
is
their bread and butter, but they do more architectural installations, sculptural kind of installations. But the same thing, that you're doing them in panels or pieces that can still be transported relatively easily and assembled on site. In that whole realm of 3D printing, there are a number of different people that are focused on 3D printing of housing or different types of construction applications. For use cases, it's definitely a lot easier to do offsite prefab, and you're shipping components and subassemblies. The on-site ones, there's a lot of different ways to skin that cat too. The logistical challenges definitely go up. And so, some of the options you see gantry-like systems, others it's, a long robotic arm.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of the 3D printing for concrete as well, which is interesting.
Exactly.
I think we had a really cool example of that at Autodesk University a few years ago, where they set it up and were just 3D printing stuff, whether it was printing benches and bridges and all kinds of other really cool stuff, like small ones, of course. But the pace of that tech is developing at a pretty crazy rate.
Yeah. Actually, one of our most recent investments is a 3D printed housing company based in India.
Okay.
They're vertically integrated. They're building the machines, they're doing the material science, they're building housing, they're selling machines to people that are building housing, and they have realized that importance of kind of meeting the customer or the projects where they are. And so they do the offsite prefab, they do the onsite kind of gantry printing. It's definitely not a one size fits all. And they were kind of taking that sort of knowledge that they developed and the tech that they've done to try to build out a suite of products or services. So they have a proprietary tech-enabled contracting company that is doing housing, or they're also just selling machines to those that want to have their own equipment for either experimentation or for commercial application.
Nice. And I feel like I'm seeing more 3D printed housing outside of the United States than within the US. And I guess I'm not surprised with the challenges in certifications and safety and making sure everything is compliant with all the different building codes all across the US. So I'm not shocked, but like I know where I lived in Dubai for a couple of years, they had started kicking tires on 3D printed buildings there. And it seems like that's getting some momentum as well. It's great to see different innovative approaches to building the housing that we need, because we need so dang much housing, and anything we can do to safely accelerate the time to market for a lot of these structures is great. So it's cool to hear that the development has been pretty impactful.
Yeah. And some of the exciting stuff we've seen in the Middle East, especially too, is, while there has been such a focus on 3D printed housing, there's 3D printed reefs that it's for, preventing erosion of coastline, or for some of the, underwater habitat, rehabilitation. Again, what 3D printing at scale allows you to do is no longer have the design limits of kind of rectilinear manufacturing. And so biomimicry is an exciting sort of focus where you're trying to figure out how to build like nature. And one of the things you can do is to start actually trying to recreate some of these structures, and even sometimes the same materials that you do find in nature, for things like coral reef or ocean habitat, development. There's some cool stuff that people are doing. It's still very early there, but pretty neat. So
that's cool. Just for that context, I'm happy we're having this conversation right now. So of course, your organization spends a lot of their time speculating on the future of construction tech and the AECO industry more broadly. I'd be curious to hear, where do you see the market heading in the next, say, 10 years as far as tech or anything else that you think would be interesting to share?
The crystal ball question.
Tell me what's coming. So
exactly. If I had the crystal ball, the investing would be a lot easier. I do believe that AI will become table stakes and just kind of ubiquitous. I don't see it taking over the world, or maybe that's me being hopeful. Doesn't take over the world. Yeah.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah, exactly. I still say thank you when I, put in any prompts.
Although I did read that the saying thank you to the LLMs is burning up energy.
Way too much. Yes. Yeah, exactly.
It's an uncomfortable problem to think about.
Still a cheap insurance.
Yeah.
I think some of the biggest and most exciting opportunities as far as AI in AEC goes will be on the pre-construction and design side. One thing that will be really exciting is that, long has the industry complained about fragmented data or unstructured data. And I think some people kind of reluctantly were forced into collecting data for data's sake and saying, why are we doing this? Like, I don't need data for data's sake. And all of a sudden, it's like, oh, thank goodness we did that. Yeah. What's really good at working with unstructured data is some of these data structuring, sort of LLM model. It's a very exciting time to see how much value can be unlocked, especially for those that have maintained some of that historical data. Because a big part of construction is trying to bid on work based off of how a person thinks they can do it, how well, how quick, how cheaply they can do it, based off of their historical work that they've done.
Yeah.
While also kind of combing the market to see, like, okay, what's different from the last couple projects we've done, or what are other people doing, or does anybody have a crystal ball and tell me what's going to be different when we're actually starting this project and procuring things, in a couple of years' time. That's a lot for a human to try to process and compute.
Yeah.
Busy work, and some people are very good at it, but it's busy work and kind of a digital gopher. And so speeding up that or uncovering insights that maybe people hadn't really been able to spot before gets
I love the idea from taking more actionable projects insights from project to project too, because that's historically hard.
Yeah.
Especially if the project team goes elsewhere after the project, or Maybe it's been 5 years since you built that one.
Yeah.
And the ability, I think, to make more broader organizational decisions and inferences based on what you've done previously and who you've worked with previously, like it's going to have a big impact. Because
Huge.
like a lot of that right now is very gut feel, kind of shoot from the hip. And I still remember my first proposal management job. There was the senior estimator, and he was like this god in the estimating room where he had 40 years of historical knowledge. Obviously, they're bringing in new data and information from all the subs and what they're able to source. And it was just this crazy process.
Yeah.
But even amidst all of that, I'd be sitting in a 10-hour-long bid review, just listening to them talk about it. And a lot of those choices were still, well, I think, I saw.
Yeah,
it usually worked out.
Yeah.
When it doesn't work out, it stings pretty bad because you might be doing a project at cost, or alternatively, you might lose some money on that project. And when the margins are so narrow, adding more certainty into that conversation pays off so very much and allows people to put their attention elsewhere and find other means to improve their margins and better manage the things they can control within the scope of their project.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, what you're touching on is that kind of intuition of the old dog that has seen a lot of stuff.
But we don't want to lose that too.
No.
It's an augmentation conversation.
Exactly. There's a great debate around whether humans should be flying planes anymore. And as a aspirational pilot, someday, I hope we don't lose that. But it is a perfect example where like your ability is based on your training hours and flight hours.
Yeah.
And if you can train a model on all of the existing flight hours and logs, you can't compete against that kind of intuition. Now, there's still the human aspect and, wanting to live and all of that, but
important part of it.
As having an advisor in the mix, that you can either have the knowledge of the 80-year-old kind of veteran that's seen everything that one could see in 80 years of life, or if you could have thousands of that 80-year-old, all with similar long tenure, that would be really powerful. And so that kind of knowledge capture, transfer, and being able to query it is really cool. But I still think we can get to recommendations or options or scenario modeling much faster. There still needs to be that human that's ultimately kind of weighing the squishy kind of side of things and is willing to take the risk, because our industry is one that's still quite risky, low margin, very competitive. And so somebody still has to have that kind of instinct, or be willing to underwrite that kind of risky bet and move forward with it.
Yeah.
We're doing the same from the investor standpoint. Yeah. And so I think, there's beyond just AI, because it's an exciting thing, starting to see the full potential of the connected construction site.
Yeah.
The connected worker, connected equipment, connected tools, being able for project managers to have visibility into like what is happening now, not what happened 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago or a month ago, but really being able to have that kind of global view across multiple projects and then down to the individual worker level starts to get really exciting. I mean, it unlocks all of the same, productivity gains that we have benefited from in the manufacturing world, that the construction world has lagged just because, again, the work is mostly happening out in a chaotic, dynamic environment instead of a factory-like setting.
And a lot of bespoke projects as well, where it's hard to apply the manufacturing conversation if everything you're building in a situation is entirely unique to that moment. Obviously, there's still common materials that go about, but the way it goes together, it's often always different.
Yeah.
It's tough unless you're building the same building over and over and over again, which some people do. It's been traditionally hard to come in and go, all right, well, we're going to go DFMA, away we go.
Yes.
It's tough.
And on that, I do think, or I hope, and I think we also need to start seeing more standardization and optimization of like many of the built assets out there. That there's a question around whether every hospital has to be unique, or every school has to be unique, or every house has to be unique. And instead, would it be better for us to start standardize, offer a smaller kind of catalog of options for people?
Yeah.
And not saying taking away optionality, but it's a very sensitive topic when you talk about housing. But nobody gets miffed when you talk about cars.
Yeah.
And Also, most people don't feel like there's a shortage of customization opportunities. As much as people will talk about wanting to have that flexibility to customize their house, the demand for aftermarket tuning shops in the automobile world is definitely, it's cottage industry size, and very good industry. But I think for housing, which shelter is part of Maslow's hierarchy, we really should be designing and building that like a consumer product, because it is a consumer product.
Yeah.
I am hopeful 10 years might be a little too fast, but that we see the sort of success, traction, and expansion of a vertically integrated like home designer builder that can kind of turn the whole model upside down, where it's, we're standardizing the design. It's not that you have to go into a home builder's massive development of a bunch of houses are all the same, that you can be doing infill. But much like any of the great consumer product companies and brands or lifestyle brands have done, it is high quality, top tier engineering and manufacturing. That's all seen as a plus instead of negative.
Yeah.
If we say manufactured housing, kind of unfairly, not unfairly, but more because of what has been produced in the past.
Yeah, historical
we
bias
assume
there has a not great connotation.
Yeah,
I think it could be further from the truth if you're drawing from the right source for prefabricated housing, modular housing now. You can find some amazing spaces.
Yeah.
And I do see, like in healthcare, like the kit of parts approach, where our contractor has, here's the 8 approved type of modules that we have for hospitals or for biomanufacturing and pharmaceuticals and such. And they're more keen to adopt that. And it makes sense, because it's also, we've certified with all the right regulatory agencies these different builds of these different rooms. And so you just pick them all and put them together. I could see in the future housing being more akin to that too, because the difference between the stereotypical cookie cutter housing, where it's literally 5,000 of the exact same house. I'll be honest, that feels icky to me as well. I don't want the same house, fully the same house as the one next to my place. I just love the uniqueness. But if you're going in the build early enough and you go, okay, I have 20 options that I can choose from in different configurations, that feels a lot better to me. I don't know if that appeals to the average person out there too. I might have a little more accommodation to that because of the, the background that I have and affinity for these types of things. But I think it's the path forward. I think it makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny. I definitely get a lot of friends that give me a call when they're thinking about building their first house or they're doing a remodel. And it's like, I don't know if you're the guy to talk to, but you maybe know something about this. It's like a little different than what we do, but
the scale's a little different. That's okay.
But it's intimidating, and they help highlight that for a person who's going through the sort of like home design process for the first time, if that's not their background, it is intimidating, confusing, and it's not surprisingly, they're kind of the wrong person to ask, like, what do you want?
Yeah, because they
can give the functional requirements. And that's helpful from like the kind of programming standpoint.
Yeah.
But a person who's never designed or built a house before likely won't have great insights into like how it should actually be built.
Yeah.
And it's much easier for people to say, okay, just show me some options or show me some examples, and kind of guiding them through it. And so I think from that conceptual design standpoint, similar to vibe coding, there's a way to go through that process. Just be like, all right, tell me what you got already. Do you have a plot, or are you looking for a plot? Like, are you planning on building, or you want something move-in ready? Okay, like how many rooms do you want? Do you like 1 story or 2 stories? Where, do you have, if you got a location, let's go ahead and check what's allowed here first. And so some of that parametric design to just kind of help educate somebody, because most people will go through the same series of questioning. It's just like, okay, what do I want? Well, what can I have?
Yeah.
Okay, well, what are the constraints? We can tell you what's allowed. Like, let's see what can be afforded. What are some of the other goals you're trying to solve for as well? There's a lot of cool stuff that we'll be able to really speed up to just help guide people in the right direction. I'm hopeful, and I'm maybe a hopeless romantic here, that there does need to be that equivalent of the GM or the Ford or the VW Audi or the Tesla Rivian of housing, that it is a big name brand that's producing housing in the hundreds of thousands, if not millions of units a year, that are great product and at a fraction of the cost that it would otherwise cost building one of one.
Yep.
With no kind of carryover of the sort of institutional knowledge that came with the first one. Lastly, what's happening in 10 years? It's long been a necessity, but we're kind of hitting the breaking point now. That I do think more of the equipment and tool automation, robotics is critical and have to happen because the labor shortage is in construction is structural, not cyclical. It's been known for quite a while, and it's gotten a lot worse recently.
Yep. It's a rough moment right now for that.
Yeah. Yes, rough moment, but it's not going to get significantly better. And the amount of new construction that's planned over the next 10 years, just continues growing.
Yeah.
There is urgency, and there's no real alternative to figuring out how do we really augment the available labor we have so that we can do more with less, hopefully keep people from being exposed to potential injuries or aging out because of physical constraints.
Yeah. There's an equitable approach to that too, where you're empowering different groups of people who might not have been able to participate in the building process. Now they can, like exoskeletons, robotics, like all these things really do play a big factor.
Yep. One of perhaps the saving graces from a labor shortage standpoint is if construction is a more appealing, safe and approachable occupation for female workers.
Yep.
We have just increased the labor pool significantly.
50%.
If you no longer have to be able to carry a weight that should not be carried by anybody, that starts to open up opportunities. But it makes for a safer and hopefully longer career that everyone can enjoy too. So
yeah.
I
appreciate your perspective and insight here. I've got one final question for you. What's one tool that you use on every project, no matter what you're working on?
I would say my wife. But no, fortunately married a wonderful woman who's my partner in kind of all projects. For projects, if we're talking about investment opportunities we're looking at, I still regularly, I'm still an analog guy for a lot of stuff. And so paper and pen is definitely a helpful tool when I'm just still trying to make sense of stuff. But some always bring skepticism, but not cynicism.
I like that.
Our part of our job is to not fall for the shiny object or be that hopeless romantic that we have to pressure test. Yeah. Everything we're looking at in underwriting, and it's getting easier and easier to do a compelling demo.
Nice. Where I can see that we're the shiny demo is very easy to make now. Does it do the thing that you really want it to do?
Yep.
Maybe.
Yeah. And this is the way that most customers are assessing new technology as well.
Yeah.
As it's just we're trying to find all the reasons to kill an idea. From a customer, it's adoption or paying for a solution. In our case, when we're considering an investment opportunity, trying to be as smart as we can with the capital that we're trusted with. And so finding all the reasons that we should kill a deal while keeping hope alive and being skeptical, it helps us understand what are we trying to avoid or what are we trying to solve for? What are those risks that can either be mitigated or just that we have to be aware of so that, in our job of trying to help founders build lasting and impactful organizations and solutions, that we're doing the right job.
Yeah.
But because there's a lot of really cool stuff out there that looks real shiny. And there's some really gifted orators out there too that have a gift to gab.
Yep.
Being a healthy amount of skeptic but optimistic as well. So,
well, I appreciate that, and I think it's healthy, and it obviously puts you in a better risk mitigation standpoint when you're thinking about your projects and where you might invest in that way. But I also appreciate the analog aspect too. I still love a written to-do list.
Yeah.
Even if I've added things to then immediately cross off so I feel better. There's a tactile feel that I do appreciate.
There is.
Darren, thank you so much for joining me on Digital Builder today. It's been a real pleasure having this conversation and learning a bit about your background and where your head's at these days.
Thank you, Eric.
For everybody out there listening, of course, this is Autodesk Digital Builder Podcast. You can watch us on YouTube if you're not on the video side of things. We're in a beautiful space right now, so you should definitely check it out and head over to that channel. Otherwise, we're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, all those standard places. If you want to ask me a question, you can find me on LinkedIn. I'm the only Eric Thomas that works at Autodesk. Until the next time, thank you again. And goodbye.